Words. Words break reality into pieces, creating illusions of isolated things out of an actual singularity. Ideas behind words take on a significance of their own. Volume 5 pieces expose words and ideas as artificial, to reveal the interrelated oneness, which is the essence of the reality you encounter. Reality presents many surfaces, demarcations, borders, lines, edges, boundaries of all sorts. Care to see how all of them are mere illusions? The essence of reality explores how the psyche which you are creates the reality you encounter. What ho, you found the essence of reality, a unique look at how life actually works. Here we look beyond standard thinking to illustrate how you attract specific events into your life and thus create your own reality. It's all about awareness of the tie between reality and your own inner self, and this level of consciousness is only ever diminished by beliefs and common notions. Lots to cover, so let's proceed. The world you encounter is full of boundaries. They appear to surround all objects. They delineate your body and define its shape. They form the surfaces and edges of everything within your view. They mark the extent of your yard, the edge of your town or city, the dimension of your country, and many even more subtle delineations. And yet, boundaries are the most illusory of reality's apparent aspects. While very useful to make sense of the world, essential indeed, the impression boundaries give is that things are isolated entities. That impression, that basic assumption that each object is a unit unto itself, separate from all that surrounds it, that impression is extremely deceiving in a very significant way. Here in Volume 5, we've been looking at words and ideas, exploring how a word and the idea behind it differ from the real nature of things. The notion of borders, of boundaries, of a surface confining any object, lines delineating open spaces, defined markers imposing time on a flowing now moment. All these imply an essence of things that is not really there. Recognizing that falsity greatly enhances your understanding of how life works. Tom Nair here. I speak from a unique standpoint, following a mystic experience during my 20s where I could see clearly the oneness of things. I spent decades delving inward into my deeper portions of my subconscious. I cleared away deceiving beliefs to achieve what I call clear awareness. I emphasize, life works very well when you see that only you drive yours. These videos communicate that awareness. They help you to see past common misconceptions to recognize how life actually works. So it is, you perceive the world primarily through your eyes, organs which catch light mostly reflecting off surfaces of things. Based on that visual sense, you perceive a realm out there of objects, stationary and moving. That reemphasizes the common feeling of you inhabiting a realm of material objects, of individual things and people. This entire collection of graphic impressions has been addressed from many angles here in Volume 5 episodes of EoR. Such exploration is very important because the conceptual impression you get about reality is based not only on the apparent form of the items in your visual field, but also on your preset understanding for what exactly those things are, including your beliefs as to how life actually works. And that understanding embodies, as often noted here, your conclusion as to the actual nature of reality, based on beliefs you hold and definitions you've learned. Whatever you believe in seems to be true. And the point of these episodes often reiterates this recognition. If you could shed that multi-leveled belief structure and just see the interactive reality in front of you for what it is, then your impression as to the nature of things, of items, of objects, would be considerably different. Throughout this series, I've pointed out illusions formed by words, as defined within your mindset, and of objects themselves. In actuality, in this encountered reality, the one you are observing as you watch my image on a small screen, there are no real boundaries. There exist only illusory surfaces, edges, borders to things, and those are created by the mind in conforming to the definitions you've learned. Words are impressions held in the mind as definitions learned long ago. As such, words themselves isolate objects into seemingly independent bundles, and those objects thus seem to exist as separate entities because that is how you were taught to see them. As a 1-year-old, through childhood, you were taught words, ball, mama, food, etc., to apply to things, and verbs, eat, drink, shush, or whatever, to apply to actions. In your budding absorbing mind, that affixed boundaries to the objects and effective designated boundaries to actions. Similarly, as you learned to tell time, you were informed about minutes and hours, that days had specific names and months were real things. Those all formed additional boundaries in your subconscious, establishing distinct impressions of a reality of specific isolated things in your daily encounter. Again, as you learned about your environment, your parents taught you boundaries. You were not to venture out of the yard, not to cross the street. You learned in school about boundaries between states and countries. These became fixed in your mind, fixed elements of reality. You were decidedly not ever taught to see reality as it is. That the reality you encountered was a flowing, interrelated oneness in which all things and actions fit into meaningful patterns. You were never informed that objects exist in actuality only as functioning parts of a complex entirety of your encountered life. Indeed, you were never informed of that because your parents and prior generations were not aware of the oneness of things. They had been programmed into common thinking by their parents and culture. They saw the world as a collection of bounded things. They interpreted reality through those same distorting lenses created by beliefs they had learned growing up, and they passed those beliefs on to you. In reality, there are no boundaries. You encounter a flowing, fully interconnected, interoperative oneness. All things relate, and the permutations that play out in your direct experience are meaningful to your personal life. Nothing happens by chance. Nothing is, in reality, inflicted on you by external power sources. There exists no force outside of your own propensity, your own impulse, that, when acted upon, attracts repeated life patterns. Let's take a step back here and work our way towards that oneness and its recognition again. Yes, the surfaces of material objects reflect the light that hits them. And yes, the table you see, the glass, the tree, the dog, the human you encounter, each have a quality of essence to them. Each exist in a certain fashion unique to that entity. There is an element of autonomous existence, at least pragmatic, to any object. From a speck of sand to the planet we inhabit, to the largest red giant star, to galaxies themselves. But that essence of meaningful being exists only within the setting it occupies. It exists within the physical realm context, gaining full meaning only within its surroundings. In one sense, an object exists only as a variable, not a solid, unchanging thing. Particles evaporate or scrape or flake off any sort of material item continuously. But in the ultimate sense, it exists only as a component of the overall scheme of its context. I don't know how easy that is to follow. Let's take an example. Here's a map of North America. Here you can picture how it really looks. And here it is with lines drawn on it, borders, boundaries. Yet if you stood on the border of Canada and the US, probably 99% of it, you would see no line, no differentiation. Prairie or forest on one side, prairie or forest on the other. Maybe water in between. Birds don't care about such boundaries, nor do worms or mice, seasons or weather patterns. Those boundaries are imaginary. Artificial delineations agreed upon by people. Here are a couple clocks, one with turning pointers, one with numbers on its face. Neither designates anything real, only pointing out agreed upon conventions. Just like a calendar, there is no real boundary between minutes and hours, no real dividing line between one day and the next. Reality flows continuously in a present moment, a now, which you only ever inhabit. All such boundaries regarding time are synthetic and illusory. I'm saying that while objects and other things seem to be determined in nature by their boundaries, their surfaces and edges, their defined locations or time points, they really aren't. They are determined in their real nature by the meaning and impact they embody in the function of reality's flow. Objects, no matter how firm and hard, how small or large, only exist as interrelated elements within the oneness of all things that you encounter. Boundaries in time and space exist only by convention, by definition. Thus, boundaries are illusory in essence. All objects and even energy involved in dynamic conditions, all things you encounter, are part of the meaningful function of the unbounded oneness which encompasses all that is. Okay, so what does that mean to you? What's the big deal? Oh, it's big, all right. If you imagine yourself as an individual, a physical unit, a biological self, that encounters a world of external objects and fixed delineations, you effectively rob yourself of all of your inherent power. Standard views of reality, passed by tradition via childhood learning, involve the self, engaging external forces and sources. These externalities you learned need to be fought with and struggled against in order to achieve your intentions. Invariably, you grow up with these standard thoughts as cornerstone elements of your self-image and worldview. So set in common thinking, you will spend your days trying to manipulate seemingly external things and people around you, fussing and fighting your way through life. You may succeed at some things, fulfill your will to some degree, but success will only come at a cost of effort against resistance. The degree you believe in gods or external forces, seen or unseen, is the precise degree to which you must fight and struggle to establish your place in the world. And even then you may fail without recourse. But reality doesn't contain truly isolated things set off by rigid boundaries. Reality is an interactive oneness. All elements fit together in a flowing set of meaningful patterns you encounter, and those patterns manifest without deviance out of your own complex inner nature. If and when you come to see that oneness, that inner-outer oneness, so you gain peace and shed fear. It may well be a long process to dispel and remove a large collection of negatives held in your subconscious. But when you take that journey and one by one remove the struggle, conflict, and impasse within your own deeper self, life and your peaceful creative role within it will improve exponentially. Grasping clearly the oneness of things and your central causal role in its meaningful unfolding, that's the goal. And one key step along the journey towards such clear awareness is culling out the notion that boundaries exist. In the real functional oneness of all things, of mind and reality, there are no boundaries at all. Boundaries appear to surround all objects. They form the surfaces and edges of everything. And yet, boundaries are illusory. The impression boundaries give is that things are isolated entities. There are no real boundaries. Illusory surfaces, edges, borders to things are created by the mind in conforming to the definitions you've learned. You were decidedly not ever taught to see reality as it is. That the reality you encountered was a flowing, interrelated oneness in which all things and actions fit into meaningful patterns. That because your parents and prior generations were not aware of the oneness of all things. Objects, no matter how firm and hard, how small or large, only exist as interrelated elements within the oneness of all things you encounter. What does that mean to you? If you imagine yourself as an individual physical self, you effectively rob yourself of all of your inherent power. Reality is an interactive oneness. All elements fit together in a flowing set of meaningful patterns you encounter. And those patterns manifest out of your own complex inner nature. But when you take that journey, it may well be a long process to come to see that oneness. Life and your peaceful creative role within it improve exponentially.